From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to navigate massive flooding from winter storms by working on that swim stroke. And now, the podcast host whose adept butterfly stroke has people mistaking him for a wayward preaching manatee, Pete Dominic!
That is correct. A lot of people confusing me with a wayward breached manatee. Happens all the time. I think it's the baldness. I'm not sure. Heart going out to those of you living in Northern California where those torrential rainstorms apparently have dealt quite a bit of aftermath. I was talking to Pete Coe. He said his son's school was canceled or closed because it was flooded. So the atmospheric river storm is continuing to pummel California with heavy rains and strong winds causing flooding and power outages in parts of Northern California. Forecasters predicting even more rain this week for the already saturated state. Meanwhile, here in the Northeast, it's going to be like 60 degrees here today on Wednesday, January 4th. On the show today, two excellent guests I love talking to. David Rothkopf and Wajahat Ali join me. My conversation with Rothkopf will start in about 11 minutes after a few news headlines here, and then my conversation with Wajahat Ali begins at the 50-minute mark, if for some insane reason you want to fast forward to that. But first, the news. Want to remind you that on January 13th, Southeast Pennsylvania, I'll be performing at Soul Joel's Comedy Club Friday, January 13th. Tickets available now in the show notes. Links along with everything else about the guests, the show, and how to subscribe with a paid subscription. Sign up now. Man, what a day yesterday. Here's how Politico put it. A small but steadfast minority of Republicans in Congress threw the House into chaos today as they rejected California Representative Kevin McCarthy's bid for speakership 3 separate times before adjourning until Wednesday. That's today. A speakership fight hasn't gone to a second ballot in exactly 100 years when Speaker Frederick Gillette, a Republican of Massachusetts, prevailed in his re-election effort on the 9th ballot. I don't know why I'm saying it old-timey, but it just seemed appropriate. It's 100 years ago. Kevin McCarthy was elected Republican leader in November. Has long had his eyes on Speaker's gavel. This is his lifelong dream. All right, now I'm just adding to Politico's reporting, but back to it. He saw his fears officially realized today when his party's right wing followed through on public promises that they wouldn't elect the California congressman speaker. And while McCarthy tied himself in knots in an attempt to acquiesce to various demands, even agreeing to a clause that only 5 members could introduce a motion to vacate, which would be a formal request to remove the speaker, it wasn't enough for hardline Republicans who were determined to deny McCarthy the speakership. He could afford to only lose 4 Republicans today. He lost 19 in the first 2 ballots and 20 in the third. So what will happen today, you'll know soon enough. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking or speculating on it. You've seen the analysis. You've seen the jokes. You've seen Democrats celebrating in solidarity over the disarray in the Republican Party and their support for Hakeem Jeffries, who got all Democrats to support him in the vote for Speaker yesterday. Came away with the most votes in those first 2 rounds. Anyway, like I said, you've heard and seen, I'm sure, a lot of it. And I talked to both my guests before or during the votes yesterday, so we don't really go too much into it. Just a few headlines you might have missed because this dominated headlines yesterday. This is pretty big news out of the FDA, but the abortion drug mifepristone is apparently now safe enough that retail pharmacies can provide the drug so long as a certified healthcare provider prescribes it, and if that pharmacy meets certain requirements according to new rules published Tuesday by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. An estimated half of abortions now rely on that medication while the rest are surgical. But it's all going to come down again to where you live. Jill Filipovich writes, you can bet that the anti-abortion movement is going to pressure pharmacy chains to not carry abortion medication. And the truth is that these pills are not going to be big money makers for pharmacies. Every incentive is in place for pharmacies to make excuses to not fill them. I'm seeing a lot of folks on Twitter talk about what a big deal this new rule is, and while I'm happy it's in place, I'm skeptical that it will change all that much on the ground. Still, a big deal and a major development I thought I'd mention. And speaking of healthcare, how about this headline? As legal pot grows, more kids are sickened by edibles at home. A new U.S. study finds that reports of young children accidentally eating marijuana-laced treats rose sharply as pot became legal in more places. More than 7,000 confirmed cases of kids younger than 6 eating marijuana edibles were reported to the nation's poison control centers between 2017 and 2021, climbing from about 200 to more than 3,000 per year. Nearly a quarter of the children wound up hospitalized, some seriously ill. And those are just the reported cases. Cases of kids eating pot products such as candies, chocolates, and cookies have coincided with more states allowing medical and recreational cannabis use. Currently, 37 U.S. states permit use of marijuana for medical purposes, and 21 states regulate adult recreation use. In a related story, young kids have become funnier, more creative, and really dialed in. Very focused. All right, I just made that up. But listen, this was inevitable, but this isn't worth keeping it illegal. These kids aren't dying. They're just getting stoned out of their brains and kind of scared for the first time. And maybe that'll make them not want to do drugs when they grow up. The point is, keep your edibles hidden, locked, and away from kids. But I did want to mention that story. I saw this yesterday and thought, oh, this is unbelievable. Ukraine's military now taking credit for a blast that may have killed hundreds of Russian soldiers in Ukraine's Far East in the first minutes of the new year. Russia's defense military corroborated the reports on Monday. They said there was only 63 deaths, but other reports are that there were hundreds. The attack potentially sets a record for Russian casualties in a single attack in the war so far. What will it do to public opinion in Russia if people even know about it? That remains to be seen. I asked Dave Rothkopf about it today. But man, a devastating missile strike on Russian soldiers by Ukrainian rockets. Probably over 100 dead Russian soldiers. So much blood all over Putin's hands. What a horrible, bloody, and historic crime one man's ego has caused. It's just terrible. Absolutely terrible. Also terrible is what happened in the football game, the NFL on Monday night. Bills-Bengals, at this point, you probably heard about it. How did you hear about it? I saw CPR trending on Twitter, which is how I figured out that the Bills safety Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest during Monday's game. Within minutes, ESPN went from broadcasting a football game to being at the center of a major breaking news event. Cardiac doctors, of course, have said for years that blows to the chest causing an erratic heart rhythm are highly unusual, but not unheard of in sports, being called a freak accident. But of course, that's not stopping conspiracy theorists from blaming the vaccine, because there weren't heart attacks before the COVID vaccines. And I should say that cardiac arrests are different from heart attacks, which are caused when an artery supplying blood to the heart is blocked, depriving the organ of blood that can trigger an arrhythmia or even sudden death. Possible due to a blockage, but not likely in a young athlete, according to the experts I've read. I'm going to be talking to Aaron Carroll maybe this week, probably next week, about, I'll ask him about this and certainly several other things. Been way too long since I spoke with him. But the idea that conspiracy theorists are constantly acting that people didn't die randomly before the vaccine, or that people didn't just die before the vaccine, this vaccine, is bizarre, but the whole ideology is. So, and the good news is that in the hours after Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field, fans donated millions of dollars to an online fundraiser that he had started 2 years ago. Now has more than $5 million in donations. So look for the helpers, look for the positive silver lining in such a terrible, tragic story, but hopefully he'll make a recovery. But really, really scary what happened there on Monday night. And one more thing I wanted to mention, my appearance on my friend Ophira Eisenberg's podcast posted today. I really like the podcast. Obviously, I love Ophira, but it's a podcast about parenting hosted by a comedian who's also a parenting. Of course, Parenting is a Joke is the name of the podcast. And here's a quick excerpt from our conversation on that podcast where I'm doing my rant against helicopter parents. That ends with a hilarious truth provided to me by, of course, Ophira Eisenberg.
We didn't think they needed to be afraid of the world because I, can look at what's out there in the world and kind of judge the threat matrix. And most parents are terrified and they become helicopter parents. They never let their kid out of their sights. And that creates problems for the kid. And that is so obvious to me. I'll have that debate anytime. We pushed them out. I would send my daughter into, like, say, the pizza shop. She's like 7 years old. So you're not coming with me? I'm like, no, you go in there. Here's the money. And you tell them what you want. And she's like looking at me with her big blue eyes, like, I don't want to do that. Go. She went in. It was awkward. She didn't know what to do when the guy offered a change. He didn't know what to do. The whole thing was awkward, and it was a complete success. And now they're both like birds in cages. They're ready to go, Ophira. Both of them are so ready.
Are you ready?
No.
All right, Ophira Eisenberg, Parenting is a Joke. Go subscribe to that podcast. She really is so great, one of the best, and I'd love to see her podcast grow and for you to support that as well as you do this. And thank you very much for listening up until now. Let's get to my guests, shall we? Coming up, my conversation with Wajahat Ali, as always, talk about life and aging and being men and families and parenting. We talk about him getting stranded. It's a great conversation. I think you're going to love it. But first, I've got the host of Deep State Radio, a Daily Beast columnist and contributor, an author whose most recent book is just out, American Resistance, the inside story of how the deep state saved the nation. Still really active and brilliant on Twitter as he is everywhere else, at DJ Rothkopf. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do it right now with the great David Rothkopf.
There he is. David Rothkopf joins me now, and Happy New Year. You've made a lot of predictions in the new year publicly in print.
That's true. That's what we do. B-list pundits. What do we have left? What do you do over Christmas?
You put it all online because, your credibility rises and falls based on all of these predictions, which we'll follow up on and ask you about.
Yeah. No, I realize that. On the other hand, I put them, with some of them on Twitter, and Twitter probably won't even be around in a year, so no accountability. I could say anything.
Is that a prediction you're making? Or what prediction are you making? I didn't see any prediction about Twitter or social media.
No. I think Twitter will be around. I'm not sure Elon Musk will be the CEO of Twitter.
Right. I heard their latest problem is like he fired the custodial staff and people have to bring their own toilet paper or something. That seems like your company's in a bad place no matter what your company is.
Yeah. I think that's a warning sign. If you're working for a company and they say, look, can't afford toilet paper, so you should bring your own, might be a good idea to spend some more time on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, listen, you've got a lot of really great pieces over at the Daily Beast. I want to talk about the threat that we are facing with cybersecurity, as well as some of the national security flashpoints that you wrote about as well. But I got to just, you can't write about a war every day. I suppose you could. Developments occur, and what has happened with Russia and Ukraine over the past couple of weeks has been devastating for both sides, of course. But I just read this morning about this devastating rocket strike launched by the Ukrainian military against Russian military barracks, where apparently Russian military bloggers over there are saying there's like hundreds of dead Russian military members. Russia's admitting at least 63 died. What a devastating strike. Does anything change public opinion in Russia? Are they paying attention to this?
I think they must be paying attention to it. I think there is some change in public opinion because you periodically will see, even on Russian television, some level of criticism, and it's cumulative. And, it doesn't look good for the near future for the Russians in Ukraine. It looks like more bad news will come out. Putin is old. He's not well. At a certain point, this is going to create a fragility in the regime. It hasn't yet. He may, try to overcompensate for that. But one of the things that I was talking about as I was sort of looking ahead to the year is that in Russia, in Iran, and to a lesser extent in China, there are big popular movements that could change the calculation for each of these countries. We've seen demonstrations in Iran, really bold demonstrations, women removing their headscarves and people burning images and, the Ayatollahs. And we're seeing more in Russia. China, there have been demonstrations around COVID and they face some economic challenges. So I think, that's one to keep an eye on too. But
you don't think China, you wrote that you don't think they will be invading Taiwan this year or anytime in the real near future?
I don't. I mean, I think that Taiwan will remain a flashpoint, a point of tension. I think there will be Chinese military exercises nearby and Taiwanese military exercises, U.S. military exercises. And Kevin McCarthy, who may or may not end up being the Speaker of the House, has said he will go to Taiwan. And if that happens, the Chinese will do exactly what they did with Nancy Pelosi, or maybe Nancy Pelosi plus 10%. And that'll create some tension. But, the Chinese have serious economic issues at home. President Xi Jinping, although he was essentially reelected to a third term and effectively for life, has a real problem on his hands with spreading COVID epidemic.
Yeah.
They have a real problem on their hands with economic issues, real estate market, other kinds of issues that have a country struggling that is used to rapid growth for the past 30 or 40 years. And I think he's going to have to focus on that. And the other reason is, as I think you and I have discussed, if China attacks Taiwan and it turns into a serious war, and the world's capacity to produce microchips is effectively devastated in that war, that hurts China too. And so while I expect at some point this will come to a head, perhaps in 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think it'll come to the head this year.
It's interesting to see how other countries, nations adapt to such things, including when Russia invades Ukraine and everything happens in Europe. We start reading and learning. You all, of course, being an expert, already know about these issues, but about Europe's dependence on natural gas. And I feel like I just read over the weekend that they've done a really good job to adapt, to shift away from what they were getting from Russia. The same could be said for factories built in the U.S. to build microchips. I think we need to start manufacturing our own antibiotics as well. But are you surprised by Europe's ability to adapt and to shift when it comes to things like energy?
They've done it too slowly. They should have done it a long time ago. They made a terrible mistake around Fukushima to shut down their nuclear plants, which could have essentially made them free from dependency on natural gas a lot sooner. But having said that, they are making serious moves. They have much more effective environmental green energy programs than we do in the United States. But they have something else going for them. Something else you may have read about over the weekend. And it's a paradox, but it's global warming. Europe is going through a very warm winter. Russia is trying to put pressure on Europe, but Europe's not using gas. The price of gas is falling, not rising right now, because it's an unusually warm winter. And that's true in Ukraine also. The Russians thought, we'll bomb the power plants, we'll freeze them. Not happening.
We will freeze the Germans. Sir, they're not freezing. They will freeze. Sir, it's too warm. I just got some of the transcript from... Speaking of transcripts, I wanted to use another one to shift to another issue that you're writing about. It scared the shit out of me. Cybersecurity, when it comes to this concern that you have, that you're writing about over at the Daily Beast. This is a really good and important article. We need a new approach to fighting malevolent forces online. Rothkopf, I've been saying this for years. I don't know what I'm talking about, but the idea that we spend so much money on defense, almost, $1 trillion or whatever it is, well, we should shift some of that away from building battleships and into what is the real threat these days, which is cybersecurity. Because in the past, you could see forces moving slowly. The ships were sailing across the Atlantic, but now back to the transcript, sir. Do you want us to turn off the Americans' power? Yes, make it so. You don't see that coming. Like the cyber attacks, you can only, it's all reacting to something. And so what are you saying here? Because it's terrifying.
Essentially, yes, I agree with you about cyber. And the U.S. has invested more in that. This administration has invested more in that. We've built up Cyber Command. We have pretty good offensive and defensive capabilities, but we have some huge vulnerabilities also, right? Because most of the targets of cyber attacks are in the private sector, and most of the intelligence and ability to respond to them is in the public sector. And unless we cooperate, we can't defend ourselves on the cyber front. It's not like a war where you send the army off to deal with it. This really requires companies and individuals to work with the government. And so that's a challenge. But there's another challenge which we don't even deal with. And that, or we deal with it barely. And that's not cyber. It's information conflict, right?
Right.
It's disinformation campaigns. We've seen it a little bit in elections.
You write, let me just read your writing. You write, foreign actors can use social media and other new media to influence domestic debate, attack groups they see as a threat to their interests, and promote unrest and division. They can use new digital tools to steal everything from data to intellectual property to financial reserves themselves. Digital investors with dubious allegiances can deny vital services to those in need worldwide or establish rules for their enterprises that advance dangerous political agendas. And then you talk about the chatbots, AI chatbots that could flood social media sites with millions of algorithmic voices advancing a single agenda or seeking to drown out voices of real people or holders of particular political views, which is why people like you and I and your empire, Deep State Radio, establishes credible voices where people can go to so they don't have to go to social media and listen to fake Rothkopf. We can listen to you on your own stuff, but this is terrifying.
It is terrifying. I'm sure you've had this experience too. You know, I mean, strange as it sounds, you know, you say fake Rothkopf, but there are accounts out there with my name on them that I didn't create.
Nobody cares about me that much. No, actually.
There's one in Asia out there that on a regular basis is putting out pronouncements, you know, from me that I've nothing to do with. And I'm, you know, nobody, right? When you look at how this happens at a high level, the way that Facebook amplified the Russians during the 2016 campaign, or look at Elon Musk. Who is this guy? He comes in, he buys a really important and influential platform, and he starts spewing Russian talking points, not just talking points about how Putin's an okay guy or Russia, there are two sides to the Ukraine war, but he also starts making it harder for Ukraine to do what it's doing using his tool. You know, they used, for example, sites that tracked the movements of airplanes in real time to help defend themselves. And he goes, oh, no, we're going to shut all that down.
Right.
And, you know, he takes an anti-vax point of view, which is something that the Russians have been supporting. And, you know, we talk about it. This guy is an idiot or whatever. This has a cumulative effect. It shapes the public debate. It's happening around the world. What he's done at Twitter has made it harder for people trying to defend democracy or, people who are in a vulnerable position around the world, not just in the U.S., to defend themselves, to express themselves. He can launch in like a tsunami of bots and right-wing voices that drown out the legitimate voices. There are a lot of ways that he can do it. And who regulates that? Nobody. Who oversees that? Nobody. Who challenges that? Nobody. And the blame goes all the way back. I was in the Clinton administration, all the way back to the Clinton administration, when in the an act that was passed in the early days of the infotech industry, we said, they don't have to follow the same rules as media companies. They're not media companies. They're just platforms. But of course, Facebook, Yahoo, strangely, I don't even know what Yahoo does, but it's still huge. Twitter, you know, all these are the big driving forces in public debate worldwide, and they are not, in the United States at least, regulated appropriately.
Yes, it's such a tough thing to try to understand how you would regulate them, much less for government agencies to regulate them, right? Fair to say?
Well,
I mean, this...
But we used to, it used to be there were laws about who could own a TV station, right? There were laws about fairness. There's the fairness doctrine. which by getting rid of them, we created these information bubbles that existed.
Yeah.
And advertising, you couldn't, if you ran a toothpaste company, which I know has been a lifelong dream of yours, if you ran a toothpaste company, you could not say, this toothpaste will make you lose weight. If it didn't, there are rules about truth in advertising, right? But there is nobody who is saying that Elon Musk can use his, he can't use his empire to spread complete nonsensical lies.
My daughter was using some kind of like charcoal based toothpaste. It was like black. It's
disgusting. It's disgusting.
Well, that's what I said to her. I said,
be a better parent.
I said,
that's
you're disgusting. You're making me look like a bad parent. And she said, that's pretty harsh. And then we went to the dentist and said, you shouldn't be brushing your teeth with charcoal-based toothpaste. You shouldn't be doing that. But it goes to what you're saying. You can sell anything, anywhere, to anyone, including my terrible daughter. But the point is taken about...
That's not true. You love your daughter. I've seen it. I've seen you tweet things about your daughter, and you clearly love your daughter.
Well, so...
Look, admit it. Be honest. We're talking about truth in journalism. Be honest.
So let me get back to another issue that you wrote about foreign policy-wise before I come back to domestic things and I'm going to talk about a few more of my daughter's weaknesses. But here's the thing. It's Benjamin Netanyahu. It's over break. I'm reading the news, and it says Bibi is the prime minister of Israel again. And I say to myself, I don't understand. I thought he was being investigated. He got voted out. But the way that things work there and alliances and parliament, you can get enough people. What the hell is happening in Israel? And then you've written about this, how the Biden administration is going to have to deal with it. How did he come back? Well,
first of all, no American can ever question another country keeping a guy in political circulation who is dubious or a criminal or a fraudster or, and certainly it happens around the world. People are comfortable with what they're familiar with. Silvio Berlusconi, who's like one of the world's big time sleazeballs, has got, a role and influence again in the Italian government. These people keep coming on back. But having said that, the problem in Israel is this is his, I think, 5th term.
Wow.
As prime minister, is that he has gradually shifted further and further right. And the people in his administration now are not just radical, extremely dangerous on the issue of the Palestinians, where they are the reason that Israel has become gradually an apartheid state. But they're anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah.
They want to redefine who a Jew is, and, only their definition will work. And, they're gradually doing the most insane thing you could possibly. Israel exists because the United States has supported Israel. And one by one, as if they had a checklist, they're going down the list and they're saying, what will piss off the Americans, Jewish Americans, who have been our biggest supporters?
Huh.
And, let's go for Donald Trump, even though 80% of American Jews oppose Donald Trump. Let's, scuttle the two-state solution, even though most Americans support a two-state solution. Let's oppose greater freedom. Let's undermine democracy. And now, yesterday, their new foreign minister said, we must be closer to Russia. We can't criticize Russia for what they're doing in Ukraine. And it's like, at the same time, they'll come to us and they'll say, well, we're your best ally. And it's like, no, you're not, and this isn't, your grandpa's U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Yeah.
Because there's no Cold War. They don't provide us with a strategic edge in the region. They're not the democracy they said they would be. They are a source of instability. They are supporting the Russians. And it is certain that the policies of this new administration, when they start taking over more settlements, when they start degrading further the status of Palestinians, is going to create a conflict. And this administration is trying to sort of manage that right now. But sooner or later, we're gonna hit a breaking point. And I think a lot of the assumptions about the relationship are going to be called into question.
Yes, indeed. That is going to be, it's going to be a wild year just with or couple years with the U.S.-Israeli relationship with Joe Biden as our president and Bibi as their PM and everything that you just said. You wrote a piece at The Beast about President Biden's midterm foreign policy report card. Just pick up where you left off, because right now, apparently Biden is being fairly effusive towards Netanyahu. I think that's probably for diplomatic purposes, but what do you think we'll see there? And then let's go a little bit more into that article about the rest of his foreign policy.
Well, what is the administration going to do? Go up and stick their thumb in their eye? Day one of it? No, they're going to say, look, we this is an important relationship to us, as Biden has always said. But if you look at what the administration's statements have been, every statement of support has been double-edged. We share values, meaning if you don't share our values, you got a problem. We share we maintain our goal for a two-state solution, meaning we know you don't, and this is going to be a problem for us. And so every one of the positive statements there was double-edged, and I thought diplomatically fairly deft, if they follow through. I mean, that's going to be the critical issue. If we start giving a free pass and say, well, sure, support Russia, don't help us in Ukraine, inflame things with, Iran, where they undercut the nuclear deal, violate the human rights of Palestinians, we're going to have to do something about it. We're going to have to change the formula. But the good news, and I think this is the thrust of the article that I wrote, is the first 2 years of the Biden administration foreign policy team have probably been the best first 2 years we've seen in decades, probably since the administration of George H.W. Bush, maybe better. And unlike Bill Clinton, unlike George W. Bush, unlike Barack Obama, unlike Donald Trump, the Biden administration has actually begun to move us towards a successor foreign policy to our Cold War policies. We've been struggling for 30 years trying to figure out what we do. They're coming in with a 21st century foreign policy where our relationship with China is central, where you try to balance having a relationship with a rising power like that, where we have integrated interests and there's a strong rivalry, where we shift away from the Middle East, where we start putting the war on terror in a more appropriate framework, where we focus on economic competitiveness. You mentioned building chips. It's vitally important, and they passed the CHIPS Science Act. We're building a new chips plant in New York State. We're building a new chips plant in Arizona. This is, sounds like economic news, but it's really national security news because we depend on those chips. And so, they've done all of this sweeping stuff despite constant resistance from the Republicans. And they have responded to this great global challenge of created when Russia went into Ukraine last February 24th and to escalate their war there brilliantly. NATO is bigger now, or about to be. We've led a fantastic global response to that. And one by one, they've undone the damage that, Trump did. Trump wanted to get out of NATO. NATO's bigger. Trump wanted to, got out of the World Health Organization. We're back in the World Health Organization. Trump got us out of the Paris Accords. We're back in the Paris Accords. We're strengthening alliances, strengthening international institutions. It's super impressive, particularly since I think a lot of people came in with, kind of low expectations.
Yeah, I think it's a great, robust, comprehensive, I used them both, article about, and you've just mentioned many of them, what he's gotten done, the Biden doctrine, does that exist? What are we going to say?
Look, I mean,
it's just stupid.
I mean, seriously, who cares?
Right.
Every time there's a president, there's like a little industry of nerds in Washington who are like, I will frame the doctrine. And it's like, first of all, there's no doctrine. People respond to there was a Monroe Doctrine, and great. That was our fifth president. So, we've covered a lot of water under the bridge since then. But, what I'm looking for is not doctrines. What I'm looking for is an experienced, cool-headed president who has some kind of vision for the future and implements that effectively. And I don't really care about what the foreign policy nerds think about it. Are we stronger now than we were under Trump? Yes. Are our alliances stronger? Yes. Are we moving towards addressing issues like climate change or the threats posed by rivals more effectively? Yes. Are we getting stronger domestically, trying to heal divisions, trying to suppress the COVID pandemic, trying to strengthen our country? Yes. Well, let's get the fucking job done doctrine. And that's, to me, that's the doctrine that matters. Right?
That's my doctrine for just when I get up in the morning.
It should be.
Yeah.
That's everybody's doctrine, know? This is, by the way, I think Joe Biden's great, sort of secret power and approach. And by the way, I see it being adopted by a lot of Democratic governors.
What?
And a couple of Republican ones. And that's, let's tune out the noise. Let's tune out the Twitterverse. Let's tune out the talking heads on Fox and on MSNBC and on CNN.
Yeah.
Let's govern. Let's just try to make things better, one issue at a time, for the people who elected us. And I think Biden has done that extremely well. But if you look at Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, or you look at Jared Polis in Colorado, or you look at Roy Cooper in North Carolina, you look at Murphy in New Jersey, or Newsom in California, or what, there are people who are just getting it done. And outgoing Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania is another good example of that. There are mayors across America.
Well, it's about understanding what effective governing will result in the long run, kind of a hare and tortoise thing, as opposed to reacting to everything, every day's news cycle on Twitter and inserting yourself into everything.
Absolutely right. When I was 21 years old or something like that, which was, dinosaurs roamed the earth, but I was something like 21 years old, and I got my first sort of vaguely political job. I became press secretary for a congressman named Steve Solars from Brooklyn. And I was really excited by this because Steve Solars was a foreign policy guy. And I thought, well, I can go and write op-eds and write speeches and be involved in these great issues of global affairs. And I got to his office in Washington, and they said, spend some time in the office in Brooklyn. I was like, oh, Brooklyn. But I went to the office and they said, focus on filling potholes. Focus on getting the escalator to the subway to function. And if you'll allow me, I'll tell you a very brief, funny story, which was I remember I had this desk there, and it was a big room. Everybody had their desk in the same room. And there's a guy behind me, an old guy, who'd been on his staff for a long time. And I remember, like, my first day there, I heard him on the phone, and he was like, hello? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I see, ma'am. I understand. I understand why you're upset, ma'am. But, ma'am, I think this is a police matter. Do you have the number of the police? Here, let me give you the number of the police. And he gets off the phone, and I'm like, this is government action. What just happened? And he said, well, this woman called me up, and a plate of cream cheese was missing from her refrigerator. and he said, but, she's a constituent. So I have to take it seriously. And, so he was trying to, and this is the point. For that woman, the plate of cream cheese was why she elected her congressman. That's a crazy reason to elect one. But it wasn't to, come up with the Solars doctrine or to come up with some new foreign policy doctrine. It's fixing the potholes. And that's what these people are doing.
Yeah, no, it's a great example. It's a great story to illustrate what we're talking about in terms of governing. But that's my final question to you. In domestic politics, the Republicans are taking over. I guess maybe we'll know more later today. It doesn't matter whenever, I post this for tomorrow. Who's going to be the Speaker of the House? I'm not sure exactly how much it matters. You shared a piece from your friend Norm Ornstein and others written at The Hill, and you've also made some predictions yourself on Twitter about what to expect from the incoming House. And that's the problem, is that they don't really govern. They're going to launch phony investigations into phony problems that don't exist, that don't affect the American people. And they're going to fight with each other. There's going to be this kabuki theater. They're going to try to undo good things. But what are they actually going to get done? What are your predictions for the Republican-run House in the next 2 years for our government?
Well, I mean, look at the way they're managing this speaker contest. You know, the choices that they've got are between, lunatics, idiots, and people who are shitty at their job. And it's like, there's no like white knight out there. And they don't, and it's because they don't care. It's because they know, because there's a Democratic Senate, because there's a Democratic president, because they have a margin of 4 votes, one of whom is a fraudster from Long Island who, is now being investigated by police authorities in the United States and in Brazil. This guy George Santos. That all they can do is make a TV show. They make a show for Fox News. Let's talk about Hunter Biden.
Right.
Who the fuck is Hunter Biden? Really, we're going to talk about Hunter Biden?
Right.
It has no relevance to anything of any sort. No one has ever said, shown, indicated, proven anything about Joe Biden behaving in an inappropriate way. But they're gonna do something. They're gonna go and investigate the January 6th Commission. I mean, what?
Right.
Because the January 6th Commission actually was doing their job, they're going to sit and they're going to try to slime everybody. It's like Ghostbusters. They like fly around the room and they slime. That's all they can do is they're sliming people.
More like Nickelodeon, really, but they just dropping slime on people.
That's Nickelodeon. That's another example. But Ghostbusters, Nickelodeon, and the Republican Party all are slime focused.
But I just want to make one point and get your response, and maybe you'll write something about this, because this is a thing that I'm kind of always beating the drum about and most concerned about. It's just one thing what Republicans will be able to do in Congress, at the U.S. House of Representatives. Republicans have been extremely effective locally in my town and towns across the country in terms of taking over school boards and town boards and so on. So I think it's important that people really pay attention to what's happening in their town, in their community, in their county, in their state, because Republicans have been really effective at creating and undoing some vital things. Your thoughts?
Absolutely right. These Republicans come in and go, "Oh my God, Catcher in the Rye is going to destroy your children." And let's ban the books, and don't let the teachers talk about their pronouns, and don't let anyone talk about pronouns. And what, you want to teach actual history of the United States? What if it makes us look bad? And you think, well, school board in my dumb town. What do I care about the school board? Well, they're doing it across the country. And gradually, without a lot of coverage, we are raising a nation of idiots, right? What they want is an empty-headed nation of people who can't make critical judgments, who follow, political leaders or religious leaders blindly, unquestioningly, don't have the tools to question them, because that's the only way their movement works.
Yeah. Well, that's Christian nationalism. It's Christianity watered down. Don't ask any questions. Believe what the Father says.
It absolutely is. And I come from a different tradition, right?
I know, that's why I said it for you.
The Jewish tradition of, I think the word for Israel, it comes from the word to struggle with God.
Yeah.
It's about struggle challenging authority, and questioning.
I've always thought I'm sure people have written about this accurately, and I'm being serious. People joke about why Jewish people are so successful, and obvious certain cultures put a premium on education, on certain ways of making a living, certain jobs and so on. But I've always just thought that if you start from a point of encouraging curiosity, encouraging critical thinking and questioning, you end at a point of different success than if you start at a point by telling people don't to ask questions, which is why my brother dropped out of, like, we called it church school in like second grade. He's like, this is bullshit. This is ridiculous.
Well, of course, look, a lot of religions are built on the idea of submission. Don't question. Follow the
right in its fundamentalist form. Some obviously Orthodox Jews.
Right, and I wouldn't. It's not especially Jews. You see a lot of communities around the country that focus on education, critical reasoning, ambition, getting the tools you need to succeed, and many of those communities. They're communities associated with every group of people who follow those precepts.
Sure.
And those are more successful.
Sure.
But essentially, we've got a political situation in the United States where one party is focusing on constantly challenging what we're doing and trying to find new ways to do it. And the other party is focusing on building a bot army of yes people to support ideas that don't stand up to scrutiny. And I wish it were not that simple. It used to be not, it used to be there was a big, Republican middle, and you could sort of sit there and argue with them on, economic policy should move 10 degrees this way or 15 degrees that way, or international policy should, we're not in that place anymore.
Yeah. And I would, again, just insert, and they are overwhelmingly, not exclusively, but overwhelmingly influenced by a certain specific type of Christian theology, right-wing Christian nationalism. And outside someone like Ben Shapiro and a few non-Christians in Congress, it's overwhelmingly led by people who have these really, really extreme beliefs. And so we gotta, I think that's why I keep bringing it back to that. I don't know. All right.
Well, and look, I get a lot of people that go to me, well, you're a Jewish guy. Why don't you believe in, the what's going on in Israel or something like that? I believe, I'm an American. I believe in the separation of church and state.
Right.
People should be able to, worship however they want to, right up to the point that it negatively influences somebody else, negatively impacts their life.
Right.
But there is no place for religion in government, not just because it creates divisions, but because it requires a different approach. It requires typically adherence to a dogma without questioning. And often it promotes the next life, not the current life. And what we need in government is something else, where we're saying, what's wrong? How do we fix it?
You think government should be focused on the current life?
Yes, I do. Because you know what happened?
The bold take.
Let me turn you back to your childhood in the Middle Ages, because we had kings and princes back then who said, "Hey, go work in the fields, live in the stables, get the plague, have nothing. I will sit here and drink my mead from a golden chalice, but you will be rewarded in the next life."
Right.
Talk to my friend, the cardinal here. He'll tell you, do this shit, waste your life, let your children suffer.
Yeah.
But in the life to come, things are going to be good. That's governing for the next life. And frankly, I just don't think it's worked out so well.
Hey, Cardinal, come over here and tell these guys what you told me about the afterlife.
About how great their things are going for you. It's like, what? The horse took a dump on your head? That's a blessing. And it's like, what?
Dave Rothkopf, everybody. Thank you as always for talking to me. So good. I learned a lot. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, there he goes. Killing. Absolutely killing there. That last section of our conversation I thought was really interesting and enlightening. We always take a lot of twists and turns, And I just love talking to that guy. So great. Go listen to his podcast and his whole group of podcasts over at Deep State Radio, and follow him on Twitter. Let him know that you heard him here at DJ Rothkopf. Get his new book, American Resistance. And now it's time to pivot, turn to, switch over, get to, and 50 other ways of saying it. My next guest, my second guest, the great Wajahat Ali, also a columnist at the Daily Beast. Hey, they should be sponsoring this show. Also the author of a great book, out last year, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on how to become American. And also great on Twitter at Wajahat Ali. Go tell him you heard him here on the show. And let's get it started right now with my friend Waj. And you know what? It is a Wednesday. Let's play the great Garrett Severs jingle that he wrote for Wajahat Ali and Waj Wednesdays.
He's Wajahat Ali. Got a book that comes out the 25th of January. Go back to where you came from. Do you mean where he got his name from? Lego abilities amaze until his wife stops his spending spree. He'll dismantle your political stance on a Zoom call in his jacket, shirt, and tie, and his underpants. His powers of thoughtful discussion bring nuanced perspective that can't help but draw us in. It's Wednesday. I'm the Wajahat Ali.
Yes, I've got him. Wajahat Ali, whose book sales were spiked because of a great MSNBC appearance that even little Stevie Van Zandt commented on. Boy, that's got to feel pretty good to be seen by that guy. Congrats. Hi.
I mean, this is what you call old man flex when you have a member of Bruce Springsteen's band and a famous cast member from The Sopranos give you a personal shout out on the Twitter. This is why my parents came to America. And also, I was informed that Room Raider gave me the best Lego Room Award of 2022. So it's a great way to cap off last year and enter the new year.
You had a lot of good things happening in a short period of time, which meant the other side of the coin was that you would be stranded with your family.
Yeah, that's how it goes. It's tit for tat. I was in Orlando, Florida.
I was all jealous of all this attention you're getting. I'm like, oh, Stevie Van Zandt, he's on MSNBC, and oh, look at this Room Raider. Screw him, he's stranded.
Yeah, good for him, mother effer. That's what you get. Yeah, even if you get the Lego Room Award, you were stranded.
What happened?
My wife made the brilliant decision to go to, we have in-laws in Florida. Kids love it because we got our grandparents, but she made the brilliant decision to fly Southwest on Christmas. And we were there with 3 kids for 8 hours in the airport. And it's one of those situations where I would have called it, but right across the gate from us, there was another flight leaving to Baltimore, and it took off. So I'm like, oh, there might be a chance, but there was no chance. So then we kind of drive back to the home. And then I tried it the whole day to get flights or something to get out. And then our flight got postponed to Tuesday. So Tuesday, we're like, all right, we'll just wait for 2 days. And just in case, we got a rental, right? And then an hour before I was supposed to pick up the car company is like, nope, no more cars. So then I drive to Orlando Airport. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll have a shot of getting a car from the airport. And I got a car reservation. I was supposed to pick it up at 12, waited in line for 4 hours. Then the lady who was really nice saw me with 3 kids is like, I'll give you this SUV and I'll give you 3 boosters. And I don't know if you have kids, you'll know this, but when you rent a car and you need a booster or a childcare seat, there's a little small warehouse where they just throw all these boosters there. You just pick one up for dear life. There's usually 40 or 50. It was barren, man. There was 2 left. So that's how lucky I got. And I drove 14 hours, left at 4:45 p.m., drove straight 14 hours, got home, put the kids to bed by 6:30 a.m., had to drive the car back to DCA before the 7 a.m. deadline, drove it back, and then had to walk across the entire airport to the Southwest terminal where the 5 pieces of luggage that we had, right? Because I have 3 kids. And of course, they have their small mini luggage, which is useless Mickey Mouse luggage. But each piece of luggage was hidden. So it was where's Waldo? So then you find it. And then I came back. I'll be honest with you. I mean, we're the lucky ones, but it just backs you up for the whole week. Just today, my exhaustion has worn out. But I was the lucky one because we had folks stuck there till Friday, man. Historic incompetence of Southwest. It's remarkable.
Was it you were flying Southwest?
My wife is from Florida, and immigrants and children of immigrants love like Southwest, even though I never fly it.
Huh.
And she's like, I love Southwest. And I'm like, eh. And Southwest, for those who are forgetting, because of just the way their company's built, because they didn't invest in the infrastructure and technology, because they don't have a hub, they anticipated this chaos with the blizzard. Unlike any other airline, though, they were completely ravaged by it, to the point where they had to cancel 3,000 flights during Christmas. And like the next airline that canceled, like number 2 cancellation was 60. So just it gives you an example. Like this wasn't because of the blizzard.
Yeah.
This was because of Southwest. And I felt bad. I got to say this. Listen, if you guys are ever in this situation, we're all going to be in this situation, especially with climate change and planes, trains, and automobiles. Don't take your pain and frustration out on the workers. They're just trying to do their job, man. And so what really kind of pissed me off was like all these frustrated people were projecting all their righteous rage against these Southwest employees. And I talked to them, and I gave them like a pat on the back, and they're like, we haven't seen our family in 3 days. We're exhausted.
Right.
We want another job. So
how do you
if that ever happens to you, God forbid, be nice to them.
How do you explain the viral video that you've yet to comment on of you throwing a frozen yogurt at a ticket agent? What was that? Were you just playing catch? It seemed like you were angry.
You know what? I felt like there needed to be some more white on white crime. So I wanted to see if the yogurt stuck. And it didn't. There was
it was just a racial purity test.
Yeah, some sort. I thought that whiteness would protect yourself against granola.
It seems like the hardest thing for you on that improv was to imagine yourself having yogurt. That seems what you really struggled with. You're not a yogurt person.
That's when you get so desperate that a lactose intolerant man is forced to eat yogurt.
When I threw that at you, your face was like, ooh, I have to do this, but ooh, it's yogurt. Like I could see there was some issue. All right, let me get back to though. You're stuck. You're stranded with your family as a man, as a father, and as a husband, because this is now you're fraught in that territory where you or your spouse makes a prediction or takes a gamble based on a conviction. We should go over there. We go over there now. We'll get a car. And then if that person, and then you either support or oppose them for Speaker of the House on that issue. And then they have somebody to blame if it falls out. No cars. You waited in line 4 hours. I knew I shouldn't have listened to you. How are you? Is the family intact?
Family's intact. I did give a couple of jabs to my wife. So I'm like, Southwest Christmas, huh?
You bastard.
And then she's like, it's never happened before. I'm like, so great idea to fly on Christmas. Huh? So I had to give a couple of those just to, to get some husband equity. Because I was the one who, before we left, I'm like, you think this is a good idea? Because my wife, for this one, she kind of just informed me that we were going. So I did. I apologize, but not really, for being slightly petty. And I banked up a little husband equity. But other than that, we made an informed decision. And she saw me, dude. I was the one who drove 14 hours. I was the one who waited in line. I made sure the kids and the wife were kind of relaxing at home. So I earned immense respect from my wife and equity, because she's like, I didn't let her drive also because her hip was hurting. So I went 14 and a half hours straight, even though I was exhausted. And then the kids gave me respect. It was a good Baba moment, because the kids are like, look at our Baba. He drove 14 and a half hours. He got us home.
You drove the solid 14 yourself? Baba behind that wheel, 14 hours.
Yeah, man. And my kids were champions. You would think 3 kids, they would yell, and they were really good. What
do you do? Do you listen to podcasts or anything on your own when you're driving?
We have to listen to children's songs and Disney songs to keep the kids entertained.
You did that? You didn't give them screens to watch movies?
We did. They gave screens, and then the screens go dead, and so then they want to listen to music. So then you're hearing Encanto and friggin' Descendants 3 soundtrack, and then Elmo. And so you have to maintain this type of mental fortitude and just push through.
I can't believe that you actually did that. That sounds.
I think that's why I'm so exhausted. I was like, I told my wife, why am I so broken? And she's like, I think you haven't slept in a week. And I'm like, oh yeah.
I emailed you and you didn't email me back. I wanted you to do the show. And then I texted you and I was like, do you hate me? And you're like, bro, wait till you find out what I've been doing.
Then you're like, oh, so you do hate me, but you have an excuse.
Exactly. Listen, you were in line for 4 hours. You couldn't have checked your email and gotten back to me.
And the funny thing is, for those who are listening, like Pete was genuinely hurt. Apparently, he sent me an email, and I didn't respond to this email. There was an ocean of emails. Then I got a text, and I could feel the pain. He goes, "Come on, bro. How come we're not doing my show, bro? Just respond, bro."
I said, why do you hate me?
Why do you hate me?
I knew that would get you. I knew that you would have to respond to that.
It's South Asian guilt. I'm like, damn it.
What is it about this day after New Year's? I saw you. Who were you responding to? And you had been having this conversation about that we should get the day after New Year's Day off. Is that right?
Dude. So January 2nd, the Monday, I woke up broken, and I'm like, and it was a WhatsApp. It's a WhatsApp thread with like people our age, friends my age, and they're all professionally working. And then I'm like, guys, I feel like I really don't want to do anything today. I just want to kind of like take this as like a off day. And then my friends are like, dude, it is an off day. I'm like, word? He goes, yeah, most people are staying at home. And then another friend's like, man, we work too hard. Let's just enjoy our kids. And then I got this tweet right when I sent that out. I was on Twitter, and Laura, I think her name is Laura Bassett.
Yeah, Laura Bassett. That's who wrote something about it. Yeah, I like
so she said, you know what? I think January 2nd, the day after New Year's, should always be a holiday. This is like really helpful. So I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one, because I'm imagining people are just like exhausted, probably hungover. It was like a good day to kind of chill for a lot of folks. And I assumed everyone would go back to work. Some people did. But like, more Americans leave more vacation days on the table than any other country. Like workers here forfeit their vacation days to work harder to make less. And there's something that is deeply unhealthy about it, especially as productivity has gone up, profits have gone up for the rich, but wages haven't. And like we have this absurd Puritan, like self-destructive, masochistic work ethic that if we're not busy at all times, we're being like slothful. And so we like work ourselves to death.
And that's one thing I so subscribe to what you're saying. Let me let you finish your point.
So, but like in other countries, people are like, nah, 9 to 5, I'm done. Or I'm going to sit on a stool. Or I'm going to give a lot of taxes like in Norway, but I'm going to expect the government to like really invest in like recreation and infrastructure and education. We're like, nope, we're just going to work ourselves to death.
Who are these stool sitters? You talk about Sicilians? Is that who you're referring to?
Isn't it in France? Like they on the supermarkets, they could sit on stools.
I know a guy in my neighborhood. He's an old guy. He walks around with a tiny collapsible stool, and he stops every block or so, and he just sits there.
That's amazing. That man is my hero.
It's a really interesting choice. It's not only that, it's that if yourself, I saw an oil painting that I started like years ago when I was at SiriusXM, and I was like, when did I think I could just sit and start painting? I was like, oh, it was when I had paid vacation. If you're self-employed, like I and so many others are now,
like you and me,
yeah, there's a different added sense of guilt there, and someone needs to write a how-to or a book to give us the kind of permission to not feel that and to live our lives. Because let's talk about New Year's resolutions. I'm going to try to take a little bit more time off or be more organized about my time this year. You're talking about exercising. I always shit on New Year's and New Year's resolutions and try to act like holier than thou. Say, it's my New Year starts on my birthday. But this year I'm not. I'm taking this as renewal. I've set a bunch of goals. Talk to me. What are your thoughts on it? Are you making choices?
Yeah. I always try. I think it's exactly what you said. It's like, look, another day, but it's a symbol. And the symbol is exactly what you said. A new chance, new year, renewal, try to do things better. The problem with New Year's resolution, both for myself and the majority, is that we create unrealistic goals and then we get like depressed and then we just forget. So what I'm trying to do this time is to be very manageable and very specific with my goals, right? So instead of just saying losing weight, like I was sick and I was traveling for 3 months and we discussed this. So I got off my workout plan, but I'm like, dude, when I was in Orlando, let me give you an example to answer your question. A family friend of my wife, the dude's like 50 years old, drops dead of a heart attack. So we go to a funeral in Orlando, right? And like, I don't know anyone there, but like you just sit there and you're like, this guy was 50. And then you think, oh shoot, I'm 42. You're like, that's not that far off. And so my wife and I are like, we really have to invest the time in our health for the sake of our children, like mental health, spiritual health, rest, working out. So January 1st came, man. Got up, did 25 jumping jacks, did 25 push-ups, did some planks. I'm going to the gym today. I'm trying to get a personal trainer to whip my butt into shape for a month. I'm trying to eat less meat, but I love meat. You know, it's like stuff like this. You know what we did also? Making a living trust for our kids.
Yeah, sure. You got to do that.
Yeah. So stuff like that, like pay off. It's one of those things where like the resolutions that I have is if indeed I'm able to make some money this year and continue on my career, and we're both independent, I was finally able to, and it goes back to our last thing about how you work yourself to death. You know, I graduated law school in 2007 and I got hit with the 2008 economic crisis, right? Law school debt for me wasn't that much, but because I couldn't pay it, the interest accumulated and just crushed me.
That's how they get you.
It gets you. And then the last year is the first time really that I've been able to dent in the principal, which is ridiculous. It's an absurd thing to say, right? So it's like me is like this year is like, okay.
It's such a horrible thing. Did you know that your loan, that where you borrowed from, they use a picture of you for their PowerPoint?
Yeah. And the Republicans use me in their PowerPoint to try to.
How are we going to make money? This guy and a whole nother generation of people who graduated at college went into the workforce at the worst economy.
Our generation knows that, right? Like our generation was the one that was really hit with this, and we're still trying to recover.
It doesn't get talked about enough. I'm glad you brought it up. Go ahead. Sorry.
You know, but for me, it's all about like, you know, okay, with this stage of my life, it's about long-term preparation, health,
sure,
wealth. If I do it properly with kids, then maybe if I'm alive in a couple of years, I can set myself up. So that's my goal for renewal for this year. And if possible, maybe try to write more and try to start writing another book. So how about you?
I fantasize about where I'll be all the time. My daughters are senior and freshman in high school. So Ava goes off to college most likely the next year. I think about all that stuff all the time, and I'm making.
You're gonna be an empty nester, man. That's profound.
But my resolution, I'm just making choices. Like I just want to make my bed every morning. Take 2 vitamin D. I have to take the vitamin D now.
Yeah, same here.
There are some very simple things that have made a huge difference. But I have a morning ritual. I do a meditation, reading, and writing, and if I get that done, it's a huge win for me each day.
But it sets you up. You know. People who are listening might be laughing about what you said about making your bed. If you make your bed every day, and that's the first thing you do, that's oftentimes one of the first steps for long-term habit formations, and it gives you a quick boost of like serotonin. Oh, I accomplished something.
And it I'm not even kidding you, it loosens up my back a little bit after sleeping. My back gets pretty achy if I sleep like around 8 hours. And by the way, folks know I have my own bed, you know. Val sleeps in she has the master bedroom is her kingdom, and I have my own thing. I love it. But yeah, so I do that and little things.
Yeah, but I think, you know, for people, I think it's one of those things that's smart is like, even if you read the research on this, people set these New Year's resolutions and they feel like they have to radically transform themselves in like a year or else they failed. And sometimes you just need to make your bed.
And
just
also,
make your bed.
And also do yoga. Like just do a few yoga moves like the cat. Just get your back loosened up, fellas. I'm just saying.
This is an amazing middle-aged man conversation. But like, it works. It'll be helpful. But like, that's the thing. I think we've talked about it on your show before, is like men in particular.
Yeah.
Just the way we've been trained, and perhaps the way we might be, is like no one ever. Our job is to suffer and die. I feel like, you know,
well, and to
you're
take
miserable, take it.
And to take
you're depressed, keep quiet. You know, you have angst and pain, and you feel like you're suffocating. Be a man. And then like the joke I always tell, I said this in front of a few friends of mine. Like, if I was trying to explain to women, I was like, listen, I try to explain to my wife, like, if the angel of death comes and the angel of death says to most men our age and older, I'll give you a choice. You can cry once and get 10 extra years of really good life, or you could just die at the age of 65. Most of us would be like, kill us now. And the angel of death is like, whoa, that's no, you don't have to die now. We're like, no, just kill it. Just take us out. Just kill us right now.
It's a terrible, terrible trait. And I am proud now. I'm a proud, emotive man. The whole range. Give it to me all. I'll give it every one of them at some point. Live on the radio, TV, in person. I want to talk about real stuff with men that is outside the normal subjects all the time. That's why I love talking to you.
You know what? I mean, I don't know if you've been following this Andrew Tate story or if you know Andrew Tate.
Yes.
So I've been following the Andrew Tate phenomenon for a while.
Oh.
And he taps into, in these Trump, Musk, Tate, Kanye, this type of toxic, masculinity, the caricature of Tom Cruise's caricature in Magnolia. They're tapping into and exploiting this frustration, this angst, this simmering anger of men. And then, unfortunately, what they do is they couple it with misogyny and patriarchy and violence and give them like the worst outlet, right? But basically, the core of a lot of this, why so many men are kind of leaning or trying to search for something, is they don't have an avenue or outlet, some of them, to really express this stuff. If they're lucky, they find a healthy outlet like yoga, like spirituality, like their children, like working out, a partner. And when they get like through disinformation and through rage, they sometimes find other outlets like friggin' Andrew Tate. But I think the central core that unites a lot of these men is this feeling of powerlessness and sadness and pain and frustration. And they're not able to verbalize it. They're not able to share it. They're not able to communicate it. And so it just keeps they just keep it inside, like just inside. They just lock it up. And that rage and that frustration, that sadness builds and it needs a release. And I feel like providing any type of forum that lets men say it's okay to like talk about this stuff, like you actually end up, I really believe this, folks, and you're going to laugh at me, you'll save lives. Because one of the number one killers of men, we've talked about this on your show briefly, is loneliness. And so if you get a forum for guys to talk like this, it's uncomfortable at first, but I think it gives the space for men to exhale and add like 10 more years to their lives and be better partners and fathers.
Very, very well said. And even if it doesn't lead to death, I mean, that's the extreme. The idea that something could lead to like great, consistent suffering is also bad.
I would think so.
Like they're like trying to find joy and avoid suffering every day is something that humanity has always struggled with. And I'm learning that we aren't the first two guys to talk about this. I mean, ancient philosophers talk about this forever. It's just been kind of forgotten. And it's discovered in all these new age ways and so on. I'm certainly practicing it. You have been, I think it seems like most of your life as well, but it's something everybody should be looking for. Andrew Tate and the ilk they profit off of it a great deal, but he's seems to have caught up with him, huh? He got arrested.
Greta Thunberg killed him with a tweet. He for those who haven't followed the story, it's an amazing story. Andrew Tweed decided to be a jackass, tweet against Greta Thunberg, the climate change activist, showing a photo of him pumping gas into one of his like 33 cars, and he goes, "My cars give the biggest emissions. What do you say about that?" And Greta Thunberg decided to just murder him and say, email me at smalldickenergy@getalife.com. And he was so like unmoored by this. And of course, he was egged on by his fanboys. You got to respond to her, bro. So 4 hours later, he did this hilarious video where he's smoking a cigar in a robe and he gets pizza delivered to him. And on the pizza box was the address, and the Romanian authorities, who I think were trying to find him over sex trafficking allegations, were like, "Oh, he's in Romania." And then he got arrested. And so now he's in jail for a month.
I did not know that's what happened.
Oh, you didn't know that?
In his response video that he made to get back at her, he exposed his location and was arrested.
Yeah, he posted his own assassination coordinates. And Greta Thunberg's response was, "This is why we should always recycle."
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wonderful.
And I was like, he's already dead. Greta, he's already dead. But
the joy I'm taking from his demise and his failure doesn't make me feel good about myself.
But it kind of does.
Yes, it does. Moving on. Speaking of Schadenfreude, last thing I want to talk to you about is the thing that's unfolding as we speak. We're talking on Tuesday, January 3rd, around 2, and Kevin McCarthy is not the Speaker of the House in the first vote. First time this has happened in 100 years. And just in terms of projections that all kinds of pundits and analysts are making about the Republican Party is in disarray, nothing is more evidence than day one. They can't get their act together because you can't do anything without a Speaker in Congress. Nothing can happen if they don't let the Speaker. What are your thoughts on this so far? And knowing that it'll probably be somewhat resolved by the time people hear this.
Well, a couple of thoughts, but look, we're taping this Tuesday, and as we're taping this, we've never seen anything like this. I'm glad this is being exposed because people are seeing like how democracy actually works. So you see the entire House assembled, and you're seeing the votes for the record for the Speaker of the House. And normally, when a party has the majority, like the Republicans do, a slim majority, all the work is done behind the scenes to whip up the votes, to make sure that when that's the official recording of votes, everyone knows where everyone stands. You have the votes. You have the Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy, who has sold his soul, if he had a soul, in this Faustian bargain to become Speaker of the House, this has been his goal, as of right now, does not have the votes to be the Speaker. There was an internal rebellion from the House Freedom Caucus, the more extreme version of the extremists, led in part by Andy Biggs and Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan and others. And you're sitting there watching in real time. It's just glorious. It's like this historic incompetence in display where I think maybe one single tear fell down Kevin McCarthy's cheeks. In front of the world, he sees himself, as of now, as of this recording, denied the House speakership, which shows you an utter failure of the Republican Party. And wait for it, the Republican Party in disarray. Now, even though you're allowed to eat your popcorn, be petty, enjoy the humiliation, a part that no one's really paying attention to, which I have to mention, is this is also terrifying because the most extreme version of an extremist party knows it has the GOP by its balls. It's squeezing it, and it's willing to expose and humiliate its own party publicly to get the extremist concessions from Kevin McCarthy. And that means that people like Andy Biggs, who last time I checked, Pete, I think he had 7 votes. This guy is one of the most extreme members of Congress, folks, from Arizona, a violent insurrectionist, one of the guys who Ali Alexander, a right-wing activist, said he helped plan the insurrection with, right? Like this guy is an extremist. He got 7 votes.
10 votes.
10? Holy shit. Yeah, so by the time, oh my God, 10 votes. And look, Kevin McCarthy could only afford to lose 4. So the fact that I think 13 Republicans went against McCarthy and that Biggs got 10 shows you that the House Freedom Caucus, Boebert, Gaetz, Jordan, Biggs, Gosar are flexing. And they will humiliate, they will bring down, they will weaken the GOP to get their extremist confessions. So this is what happens when extremists fight with other extremists to prove their extremism in front of an extremist base. The dissolution of the GOP, but we should kind of flex and laugh about this, and Democrats should pounce on this. But what I'm also saying is, when one of the 2 major political parties, Pete, is overrun by extremists, that ain't good for democracy at all, man.
It's overrun by extremists. He needed to get the vote of the guy who lied about everything about his life and is now being investigated, Santos. He needed to get his vote. He stands for absolutely nothing and nobody, Kevin McCarthy, and everybody seems to know that. I don't know what this means for the House. The knives are out. Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're all naming names and going off on each other. They're eating each other alive. But again, Waj, I'll let you go. But my concern is what happens at the local level. And a lot gets done at the local level. So what is your message to the people?
My message has always been the same, is that we have the numbers. And when the numbers show up and flex and organize, we win. Republicans are organized, especially at the local level. And the strategy that they've put in place is to take over local precincts, to take over local school boards, to take over local hospital boards. They use right-wing funding. They use a couple of suburban moms and groups, right, that are organized. And they use violence and intimidation.
Yes.
And as such, when it comes to violence, threats, and intimidation, and Pete, you've gone through this, the majority backs down. But especially when it comes to school boards, each time we've seen, even in the red states, when the majority steps up and flexes, they win. they shut down the CRT garbage, the anti-trans garbage, right? They shut it down, and we retain power at the local level. So it could be very comforting to be cynical and apathetic in this new year, but we need people who simply care and are passionate about democracy to step up and run for local positions, school boards, city council. I don't care, right? Get involved locally, because if you cede this space is actively being taken over by right-wing extremists. It's happening all across America. So this is where we have the numbers. We just need people to step up. And if you feel like you aren't qualified, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump was president of the United States of America. The bar is low. You can hop over that bar.
Well said. Thank you very much for joining me as always, buddy. I hope that you get some rest and your New Year resolutions all succeed and consistent. And don't, if you lose a day or two or whatever, don't be set back by it, right? Get back on the jumping jacks.
Yep. But we're good. I mean, we're lucky. We're good. We're healthy. We're happy. Our kids are healthy. It was making me think about that. Like, we have to value life, especially as we buried this 50-year-old man. Yeah. So, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So I hope the listeners, this new year, just take care of yourself, take care of your mind, take care of your body, be grateful for whatever you have, and build off of that. And celebrate the wins that when you can, and take a few moments every day to indulge in whatever gives you some joy and passion, even if it's something ridiculous and silly.
Yeah. What's yours going to be?
I build Lego sets with my kids, and now I play the guitar. I'm trying to play the guitar, and I play with my babies. I chase my daughter around. Like, these are fun things. If you act like a goofball with your kids, I feel like like if your kids are laughing and your kids like you and your kids want you around, I feel like that's a win in life.
That's so great for you to say that. When I said, what are you going to do? You said, I play with my kids. It's the greatest answer, I think, and it's the best kind of dad. I admire it so much. There's so much put into ego and money and, quote, success and career for men, especially, obviously. And when my kids were little, I did as much as I could with them. I had a really good work-life balance. And like you, it wasn't like I have my hobbies, I have my interests, and I did have friends before I had kids, and I made them again as my kids got older. But I lost a lot of friends almost purposely, because what I wanted to do the most was play with my kids. It was literally my favorite thing. Anything they would do with me, I would do with them. My dad was that way with my brother and I too. We hung out.
Yeah, and like, I enjoy it, right? Like people say, "Oh, you're traveling. You must be good to get away from your wife and kids." I'm like, "No, man. I sit there like I miss them."
Right,
like,
me too. Yep, that's good.
My wife jokes. She goes, "What are you doing when you go?" I'm like, "I'll tell you. I go, I give a speech, I go to my hotel room like a loser, I put on my pajamas, I go on WhatsApp, I see videos that you sent, and I look at sports like replays, and then I sleep crying in bed." Eating a $7 peanut from the fridge.
That's really not very trustworthy of you to be doing all that on the road. All right, bud. Thank you so much for talking to me as always, man.
All right, later. Happy New Year, guys.
Yeah, there he goes. Wajahat Ali. Oh, man. Two great guests, two great conversations, and a whole bunch of laughs with both those guys as well. Please let them know that you heard them here on the show. Please support the show with a paid subscription. If you haven't signed up, I could use it to sustain the podcast, to keep it going. Can't do it without you. It's a free podcast, and lots listen for free, but it's a lot of work every day, particularly yesterday. A lot of work, and I can't do it without you. So go to standupwithpete.com and sign up now. And I will talk to you tomorrow. I've got some great guests set to join me still this week. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, John Fugelsang, Jonathan Alter. Hopefully Christian and Ophira will join me on the Friday show. We'll be doing a hangout Thursday night at 8 p.m. I hope to see you there. But for now, it's John Carroll singing us out with a song he wrote just for us. Go buy it right now at johncarroll.org. Take it away, brother.